John Miller sat perfectly still at the curved table, his face a mask hiding the anger that stirred beneath. Around him, the Galactic Council chamber hummed with the sounds of 200 alien species. Some floated in tanks. Others needed special breathing equipment. Many looked almost human, but none truly were. The vote results flashed across his screen. 137 against, 63 for. Earth had lost again. "The Council has spoken," said Vexillar, the High Chancellor of the Zellarian Imperium. The tall blue-skinned alien's voice carried a hint of pleasure. "Human expansion into the Orion sector remains restricted." John said nothing. This marked the 12th human proposal rejected in the past year. Each time, the Zellarians had led the opposition. Each time, the margin grew larger. Ambassador Miller, "Does Earth wish to comment?" asked Trelkan, the elderly Zinthari moderator. "No comment at this time," John replied, his voice flat. Around the chamber, several delegates exchanged worried glances. Human representatives were known for their passionate speeches, not quiet surrender. After the session ended, John walked quickly through the massive hallways of the Council station. The space habitat orbited a neutral star and had served as the center of galactic politics for over 3 centuries. Humans had only held seats for 40 years, newcomers by galactic standards. His communication device buzzed. "Secure line from Admiral Rogers," it announced. John ducked into a private room and activated the screen. Susan Rogers appeared, her uniform crisp, her gray hair pulled back tightly. "I watched the vote, John," she said. "The President wants an emergency meeting." "I'll head back immediately," he replied. "No need. We're already en route to you." "Montana will dock in 6 hours." John raised his eyebrows. The Montana was the flagship of Earth's defense fleet. "That serious?" "Yes," Susan said simply. "Be ready." Peter Walsh hurried through the lower levels of the station where most delegates never ventured. As a diplomatic aide, he had access to areas service workers used. More importantly, as someone people tended to overlook, he heard things not meant for human ears. He turned a corner and nearly collided with a small green prill. The squat alien chittered nervously and scurried away. Peter continued to the maintenance hub where his contact waited. The Krivac engineer stood nearly 7 feet tall, his scaled skin glistening under the lights. "Human Walsh," he rumbled in greeting. "Do you have it?" Peter asked. The Krivac handed, over a data chip, financial transfers from Zellarian accounts to 27 Council species, all made within days of votes against human interests. Peter nodded. "Your people made the right choice contacting us. The Zellarians promised my government mining rights if we helped them, but we remember when humans defended our colonies during the Scar Plague. Such debts matter." President Catherine Wells reviewed the evidence on the secure display. Her office in the United Earth Government building overlooked the rebuilt skyline of New Washington. Earth had recovered well since the contact wars 30 years ago. "And you're certain this data is authentic?" she asked. Peter nodded. The Krivac provided verification codes. "Our analysts confirm it's real." Admiral Rogers stood by the window. "This explains the voting patterns. The Zellarians have been systematically buying votes to isolate us." "But why?" asked John. "We've never threatened their interests." "Because we're growing too fast," said Rogers. "Our technology adapts more quickly than any species they've encountered. They fear what we might become." The President tapped her fingers on the desk. "Options?" "We could present this evidence to the Council," John suggested. "And then what?" Rogers countered. "The Zellarians will deny it. Their allies will support them. We'll be right where we started." "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" the President asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. "Withdrawal," Rogers said firmly. "Complete diplomatic separation from the Council." A stunned silence filled the room. "That would be unprecedented," John finally said. "No species has ever withdrawn once admitted." "Exactly," said Rogers. "They don't know how to handle it, and they don't realize how dependent they've become on us." The President nodded slowly. "Few remember that we developed independently for centuries, We joined the council hoping for partnership, not to be manipulated and restricted at every turn. The Galactic Trade Federation relies on our shipping networks, Peter added. The council's communication systems run on our quantum tech. Half their peacekeeping operations are staffed by our people. If we pull out completely, John began. They'll feel it, finished Rogers. Hard and fast. The president stood. I want a complete withdrawal plan on my desk in 24 hours, and prepare the fleet for potential defensive posture. 2 days later, John Miller entered the council chamber for what he knew would be the last time. The session began as normal, with procedural matters and minor votes. John waited for the appropriate moment. When the floor opened for new business, he rose. The representative from Earth has the floor, announced Trelkan. John activated the central projection system. President Wells's image appeared above the chamber, causing a ripple of surprise. Heads of government rarely addressed the council directly. Members of the Galactic Council, she began, her voice steady and clear. For 40 years, humanity has participated in this body with good faith and honest intentions. We have contributed technology, resources, and lives to causes that benefit all sentient beings. She paused, her gaze sweeping the chamber. Today, that participation ends. Earth is withdrawing from the Galactic Council, effective immediately. The chamber erupted. Delegates shouted questions and objections. Some stood in protest. Others sat, in shocked silence. This decision comes after careful consideration, the president continued when the noise subsided. We have discovered systematic corruption and manipulation designed specifically to undermine Earth's standing in the galaxy. Vexillar rose, his tall frame rigid with anger. These are baseless accusations. The Zalarian Imperium demands, Zalarian Imperium is in no position to demand anything, Wells interrupted coldly. All council representatives have 48 hours to leave human space. All joint operations will cease within 1 week. Earth's borders are closed to council traffic, until further notice. She looked directly at Vexillar. You wanted humanity contained, Chancellor. You now have exactly what you wished for. The transmission ended. The chamber descended into chaos. John stood amid the uproar, calmly removing his official council insignia. He unpinned the translation device from his collar and placed it on the table with a small click that somehow cut through the noise. Without a word, he turned and walked toward the exit. Several delegates called after him, including Trelkan, whose ancient voice cracked with distress. Ambassador Miller, this cannot be the end of dialogue. John paused at the doorway, looking back at the scene of confusion. Species that had existed together for millennia were now shouting at each other, already taking sides. I'm no longer an ambassador, he said simply. Then he walked out, leaving behind the bedlam that was only beginning. As the doors closed behind him, John allowed himself a small smile. Humanity had finally learned the oldest lesson in politics. Sometimes you had to leave the table to be heard. The lights flickered for the third time that day in the Central Administration Wing of the Galactic Council Station. A group of Melnarian clerks chittered nervously as they tried to restore the communication system. Why does nothing work? Demanded a frustrated Draconite official. His scaled face flushed red with anger. It has been only 1 week since the humans left. They maintained most of the systems, replied a technician. We didn't realize how many of our staff were human until they all departed at once. Across the station, similar scenes played out. The automated translation system developed glitches. The gravity fluctuated in the outer rings. Food distribution became irregular. The carefully balanced ecosystem of galactic governance began to unravel with surprising speed. In the main council chamber, an emergency session had been ongoing for 3 days straight. Chancellor Vexillar of the Zalarians stood before the assembly, his usually commanding presence diminished by exhaustion. We must establish a committee to address the human withdrawal, he said. Their actions are clearly meant to punish the council, but we will adapt. An elderly Zinthari representative rose slowly. With respect, Chancellor, perhaps we should consider what drove them to such an extreme action. The evidence they provided about voting manipulation, fabricated, Vexlar snapped. A convenient excuse for their isolationist agenda. The Zinthari's voice grew firm. My people have known humans longer than most. They do not abandon allies without cause. The debate continued, growing more heated as news arrived of greater disruptions throughout Council space. Lieutenant William Carter stood at his post at border checkpoint Alpha 9. The massive defensive platform marked the edge of human territory near the Orion Arm. Through the viewport, he watched as another diplomatic vessel approached. "Sir, the Brill ship is requesting permission to dock," reported his communications officer. "They claim to have an urgent message for Earth." "Same as the others," William said, his face expressionless. "Standard response." The officer nodded and activated the comms. "Brill vessel, this is Earth Defense Checkpoint Alpha 9. By order of the United Earth Government, no Council vessels are permitted in human space at this time. Please reverse course immediately." The Brill captain's desperate voice came through. "Please, we only wish to speak with your leaders. The trade routes are collapsing without human merchants. Our economy cannot sustain." William cut the transmission with a quick gesture. "If they don't turn around in 5 minutes, power up the warning systems." His second-in-command looked troubled. "Sir, that's the 7th diplomatic vessel today. Maybe we should at least pass their messages along." "Orders are orders," William replied. "The president was clear. No exceptions, no back channels. They ignored us for years. Now they can see what that feels like." He watched as the Brill ship hesitated, then slowly turned away. On the human colony of New Montana, Governor Alice Freeman faced an angry crowd outside the administrative building. The planet sat near the border of Council space, and many colonists had built relationships with neighboring alien settlements. "My daughter is engaged to a Zinthari," shouted one. "And are we just supposed to cut all ties with his family?" "I've spent 10 years building my trade network," called a woman. "The isolation policy will ruin me." Alice raised her hands for quiet. "I understand your concerns. This is difficult for all of us, especially border colonies. But Earth's decision affects our security and future. The policy allows for necessary transitions. Personal relationships can continue with proper clearance." "And our businesses?" demanded the merchant. "Earth is establishing internal trade routes to replace Council markets," Alice explained. "There will be adjustment funds available." Not everyone seemed convinced, but the crowd began to disperse. Alice sighed as she walked back inside. The truth was more complicated than she could share. Intelligence reports showed increased military activity near several human colonies. The isolation wasn't just political, it was preparation. Dr. Nancy Hill stared at her laboratory on the International Research Station horizon. For 5 years, she had led a team working on a pan-species vaccine against the scar plague, which had devastated multiple civilizations over the centuries. Her alien colleagues, a Krivak geneticist, 2 Zinthari immunologists, and a Brill biochemist, watched her silently as she packed her equipment. "You cannot leave," said Krell, the Krivak. "Our work is too important." Nancy paused, looking at the progress charts on the wall. They were so close to a breakthrough. "These are my orders," she said quietly. "All human scientists must return to Earth space immediately." "The plague does not care about politics," argued Sen, the elder Zinthari. "It kills all our peoples equally." Nancy set down a sample case. "I know, and I've requested a special exemption for this project, but until I receive it, I have to comply." "And if the exemption is denied?" asked the Brill scientist. Nancy didn't answer. She couldn't say what she truly feared. That human withdrawal might last far longer than anyone expected. That bridges, carefully built over decades, might burn completely. Admiral Susan Rogers reviewed the latest reports in her office aboard the Montana. The massive warship patrolled the edge of the Perseus Arm, a show of force to discourage any opportunistic moves against human territory. The Galactic Trade Federation reports a 30% drop in overall commerce, said her intelligence officer. The Zilarians are attempting to establish new shipping networks, but without our jump gate technology, they're limited to slower routes. Susan nodded. And military movements? The Draconites have mobilized near their border with the Solari Union. Without human peacekeepers between them, old tensions are resurfacing. Just as we predicted, Susan said. Any direct threats to our colonies? Nothing concrete. But the Solarians have moved 2 battle groups closer to the Orion sector, likely posturing, but we're monitoring them. Susan stood and walked to the viewport. Stars stretched endlessly before her. Somewhere out there, the carefully maintained balance of power was shifting. Earth had withdrawn from the game, but the game hadn't stopped. Her communication panel lit up with a priority message from Earth. President Wells's face appeared on screen. Admiral, how goes the border patrol? Quiet so far, Madam President. The show of force seems to be working. No one wants to test us directly. Good. I've just received a private communication from the Zinthari High Council. They're proposing to act as intermediaries. Susan raised an eyebrow. Already? It's only been 3 weeks. The disruption is spreading faster than even we anticipated, the President replied. The Council's systems relied on human expertise more than they knew. What's our response? The President smiled slightly. We wait. Let them feel the pressure. Build a bit more. The Chancellor hasn't reached out personally yet. And when he does, then we'll know our point has been made. But understand this, Admiral. We are not going back to the way things were. If we return to the Council, it will be on our terms. As the transmission ended, Susan looked again at the stars. Humanity had stood alone before. They had survived wars, plagues, and their own self-destructive tendencies. They had reached the stars without help. If necessary, they could do so again. 3 months had passed since Earth's withdrawal. The once orderly Galactic Council chamber now resembled a marketplace more than a seat of interstellar governance. Delegates shouted over each other with no functional translation systems to bridge the hundreds of languages. The air smelled of too many species packed too closely together, as the environmental system struggled to maintain proper conditions. Grand Arbiter Kylox of the Melnarian Collective rose from his seat, his normally pale skin flushed purple with anger. Enough, he shouted, his translator device crackling with the strain. We cannot continue this way. The room quieted slightly, if only from surprise. The Melnarians were known for their calm, logical approach to all matters. For 3 cycles, we have failed to pass a single resolution, Kylox continued. Trade, routes collapse, border disputes escalate, and what do? We bicker like larvae. Chancellor Vexillar stood, his tall blue form imposing. The Arbiter's frustration is understood, but unnecessary. The Council functioned for millennia before the humans. We will adapt. Kylox turned to face the Zilarian leader directly. Adapt? Half our systems are failing. The humans built infrastructure we didn't even understand. An unfortunate dependence we will overcome, Vexillar replied smoothly. This is your fault. Kylox suddenly pointed at Vexillar. The chamber fell completely silent. Such direct accusation violated all Council protocols. You drove them away with your schemes, your bribes, your fear of their potential. The Zilarian guard stepped forward, but Vexillar waved them back. These are serious accusations, Arbiter. They are truth. We have seen the evidence they provided. Vexillar's eyes narrowed. Evidence can be manufactured, as can consent through bribery, Kylox countered. What happened next shocked the entire assembly. Kylox, the respected Melnarian arbiter, lunged across the space and struck Chancellor Vexillar across the face. In the 3,000 years of Council history, no physical altercation had ever occurred on the chamber floor. Guards rushed forward. Delegates leapt to their feet. The chamber dissolved into chaos. Eric Young felt distinctly uncomfortable as the only human on a ship full of Brill. Despite holding citizenship in the Brill Confederacy for over a decade, he had never felt his humanity more keenly than now. We are approaching Earth Defense Perimeter, chittered the captain. Your codes must work, young human, or this mission fails. Eric nodded nervously. They'll work. They have to. The small trading vessel carried no weapons, but approached Earth, space without permission. Under normal circumstances, they would be warned, then disabled if they continued. Eric's former connections in Earth's diplomatic corps were their only hope. His console beeped. "Incoming transmission," he told the captain. Stern human face appeared on screen. "Unidentified vessel. This is Earth Defense Checkpoint Delta 7. You have entered restricted space. Reverse course immediately." Eric leaned forward. "This is Eric Young, Earth Citizen ID 4573820, requesting emergency diplomatic contact under Protocol Omega-9. There was a pause. The defense officer's eyes widened slightly. "Transmit verification," came the response. Eric sent his old security codes and waited. Minutes stretched painfully. "Proceed on current course," said the officer finally. "You will be escorted. Any deviation will result in immediate action." As two Earth fighters appeared alongside them, the Brill captain relaxed slightly. "Your codes worked." "Don't celebrate yet," Eric said. "Getting in was the easy part. Convincing Earth to help the Brill economy before it collapses entirely will be much harder." Lieutenant Commander Frank Summers watched the sensor readings from the bridge of the patrol vessel Vigilant. His ship quietly monitored the edges of the Perseus Arm, where 3 different alien territories converged. "Sir, the Draconite fleet is on the move again," his sensor officer reported. "They've advanced to the outer edge of the Solari mining zone." Frank studied the tactical display. "And the Solari response?" 3 defense platforms activated. They're powering weapons." Frank frowned. For centuries, humans had maintained peace in this region through a combination of diplomacy and show of force. Now, with Earth's withdrawal, old enemies tested boundaries once again. "Any communication between them?" "None we can detect, sir." That was the most troubling sign. When species stopped talking, shooting usually followed soon after. "Record everything," Frank ordered. "But maintain our position. We observe only." His second-in-command looked troubled. "Sir, if they start firing, we do nothing," Frank said firmly. "Those are our orders. Earth has withdrawn from peacekeeping operations." He didn't add what they both knew, that watching potential slaughter, without intervening, violated everything they had trained for. But Earth's new policy was clear. Let the galaxy learn what human absence truly meant. Mary Donahue sifted through intelligence reports in her office at Earth Defense Headquarters. As the lead analyst for extraterrestrial affairs, she had predicted many of the consequences now unfolding across the galaxy. She added another marker to her display map, a red dot indicating open conflict. This made the 3rd minor war to break out since Earth's withdrawal. Nothing galaxy-threatening yet, but the pattern was clear. Her assistant entered with another data packet. "Latest reports from our remaining listening posts, ma'am." Mary scanned the information quickly. "The Brill economy has dropped another 8%. The Zinthari are trying to mediate the Draconite-Solari standoff, but having no success." She paused at one report. "The Zolarians have lost control of 2 outer colonies. Confirm this." "Confirmed, ma'am. Local governors have declared independence, claiming the central government can no longer protect them without human security guarantees." Mary sat back, considering the implications. The fracturing had begun faster than even she had predicted. Without the stabilizing influence of Earth, ancient divisions were resurfacing throughout the galaxy. Her secure line buzzed. "The President is requesting your assessment," said the aide. Mary gathered her reports. The data told a clear story. The galaxy was learning a painful lesson about human value. The question was how far Earth would let the lesson go. In the council chamber, now emptied after the unprecedented physical confrontation, Chancellor Vexillar sat alone. A small cut on his face had been treated, but his pride suffered a deeper wound. An aide approached cautiously. "Chancellor, the vote on sanctions against Earth has been postponed due to today's incident." Vexillar didn't respond immediately. For centuries, the Zolarian Imperium had skillfully manipulated council politics. Their technological advantage and ancient alliances had assured their dominance. Then humans had arrived, adaptable, innovative, and frustratingly unpredictable. Their technological progress in mere decades had accomplished what took other species centuries. Chancellor, the aide prompted, how many species have withdrawn support for sanctions? Vexler asked. The aide hesitated. 17 since yesterday, 34 total. And how many have submitted unofficial requests to restore relations with humans? 42, Chancellor. Vexlar finally looked up. We miscalculated. Sir, we believed humans needed the Council more than the Council needed humans. We were wrong. The aide shifted uncomfortably. What are your orders? Vexlar stood slowly. For the first time in his long political career, he faced a situation he couldn't manipulate to his advantage. The humans had changed the rules of the game by refusing to play. Prepare my ship, he said. I will speak with the High Council. And the sanctions proposal? Vexlar's expression hardened. Withdraw it. It seems we lack the necessary coalition to enforce such measures. As he walked from the chamber, Vexlar understood a difficult truth. In attempting to contain humanity, he had only proven their importance. The question was whether this realization had come too late. 8 months had passed since Earth closed its borders. Winter snow fell outside the windows of the United Earth Government building as President Catherine Wells studied the latest economic reports. The numbers told a clear story. While Council, space struggled, Earth prospered. The galactic credit has lost 40% of its value against our currency, her economic advisor explained. Meanwhile, our internal markets have grown 12% since we redirected all trade inward. Catherine nodded. And our colonies? Initial hardship has stabilized. New supply chains are functioning well. Some border worlds actually report better conditions now that they trade exclusively with other human settlements. A soft chime interrupted them. Her chief of staff appeared on screen. Madam President, Dr. Jenkins has arrived for his scheduled presentation. Send him in, she replied. The door opened to reveal Paul Jenkins, a tall man with tired eyes and rumpled clothes. Like many scientists working on the new defense initiatives, he probably hadn't slept properly in weeks. Doctor, I understand you. Have news, Catherine said. Paul nodded, setting down his secure data tablet. The Prometheus protocol is complete. Final tests were successful this morning. The room fell silent. Everyone present understood the significance of this announcement. Show me, the president requested. Paul activated a holographic display showing a small Earth vessel surrounded by energy weapons fire. The impact seemed to ripple across an invisible barrier, dissipating harmlessly. The shield absorbs 98% of energy weapons at all known frequencies, Paul explained. Kinetic impacts are similarly deflected. We've essentially created an impenetrable defensive system. And power requirements? Asked Admiral Rogers, who had been silently observing. Manageable with our newest reactor designs. We can outfit every major Earth vessel and colony within 6 months. The president stood and walked to the window, looking out at the snow-covered capital. So we've achieved what you promised. Earth is now virtually impervious to attack. Yes, Madam President. She turned back to face the room. Perfect timing. Captain Lisa Cooper stood on the bridge of the EDF Intrepid, staring at the emergency transmission playing on her main screen. The message showed a Zinthari scientist, her feathered crest flattened in distress. This is Science Station Harmony. We are under attack by unknown vessels. Our shields are failing. We have civilians aboard. Please, if anyone can hear. The transmission cut to static. Distance to the Harmony station? Lisa asked. 40 minutes at maximum speed, Captain. Her navigator replied. Lisa hesitated. Her orders were clear. Maintain patrol within human space, avoid all involvement in external conflicts. The Harmony station lay just outside human territory in the neutral zone. The Zinthari were our closest allies before withdrawal, her first officer reminded her quietly. Lisa knew the stakes. Violating the non-intervention directive meant risking her career. But she also knew the Zinthari had stood by humans during the contact wars when no other species would help. Plot intercept course, she ordered, battle stations, and note in the log that this decision was mine alone. The bridge crew moved with renewed purpose as the ship turned toward the distress call. Inform Earth Command. We are responding to an emergency, Lisa added. Tell them I'll accept the consequences when we return. John Miller sat across from President Wells in her private office. After months as special advisor, he'd grown used to these late-night strategy sessions. 70%, he said, tapping his report. That's how many council species have now sent unofficial envoys requesting our return. And the Zolarians? She asked. Still officially maintaining their position, but our intelligence suggests Chancellor Vexillar is facing significant pressure from their High Council. 3 more of their outer colonies have declared independence. Catherine smiled slightly. It seems our absence has been educational. The galaxy is learning that humans weren't just another member species, John agreed. We were the glue holding much of their system together. And the conflicts? John's expression darkened. The Draconite Solari War has escalated. 3 systems affected now, refugee numbers climbing, and 2 more minor conflicts have erupted in the Cygnus Arm. Casualties? In the millions based on our estimates. Catherine was silent for a moment. We knew there would be a cost to this strategy. The question now is whether we've made our point clearly enough. John handed her another data tablet. I think this answers that question. The Council has voted to send a formal delegation to Earth, with unprecedented authority to negotiate. Who will lead it? Trelkin of the Zinthari, and notably, no Zolarian representatives. Catherine leaned back in her chair. Then it's time for the next phase. On the outer edges of the Orion sector, Lieutenant Commander Frank Summers watched in horror as Draconite warships bombarded a civilian Solari station. His patrol vessel had been monitoring the escalating conflict, still under strict orders not to intervene. Sir, his communications officer called urgently. Priority message from Earth Command. Frank moved to the console, expecting another reminder of non-intervention protocol. Instead, the message was brief and clear. All vessels, effective immediately, limited peacekeeping operations authorized when civilian populations are at direct risk. Use minimum necessary force. Earth Defense Command. Frank looked up at the view screen where the station still burned. Weapons online, he ordered. Target the Draconite lead vessel, warning shots only. Open a channel. As his ship moved to position, Frank felt a complex mix of emotions. Relief at finally being allowed to act. Sadness for those they couldn't save earlier. And pride that humanity was taking its first small step back toward engagement. The Galactic Council had been in continuous emergency session for 15 days. The once grand chamber now showed signs of neglect. Broken seats, malfunctioning systems, inconsistent lighting. The motion passes, announced the temporary chairperson, a Krivak elder who had taken on moderator duties after multiple species had walked out in protest weeks earlier. A high-level delegation will travel to Earth with authority to negotiate terms for human return to the Council. Chancellor Vexillar, noticeably absent from the vote, watched from a private viewing room. His authority had been severely undermined in recent months as the consequences of human withdrawal rippled throughout the galaxy. An aide entered with news. Chancellor, we've received reports that Earth vessels have begun limited peacekeeping operations in contested areas. Vexillar's eyes narrowed. They're testing the waters, seeing how we respond to their partial return. Should we issue a statement of protest? The Chancellor laughed bitterly. With what authority? Half the Council would ignore us. No, the humans have outmaneuvered us completely. He turned away from the viewing screen. They waited until we came to them. Now they dictate terms from a position of strength. He shook his head in reluctant admiration. A masterful strategy. What happens now, Chancellor? Vexillar sighed deeply. Now the galaxy learns what it costs to underestimate humanity. The Earth diplomatic facility on Luna gleamed in the harsh sunlight as the alien delegation ship docked. After nearly 9 months of isolation, humanity was finally ready to receive visitors, but on their terms, and on their territory. John Miller stood in the reception area alongside President Wells and the newly assembled negotiation team. It felt strange to be preparing for diplomatic talks again after so many months of silence. "They're docking now," said a staff member. "Remember," the president said quietly to her team, "we are not supplicants here. They have come to us." The airlock doors slid open. First through was Trelkan, the elderly Zinthari whose feathered crest now showed streaks of gray. Behind him came representatives from 12 major council species. Conspicuously absent were any blue-skinned Zalarians. "President Wells," Trelkan said, bowing slightly, "on behalf of the Galactic Council, I thank you for receiving us." "Elder Trelkan," Catherine replied with a polite nod. "Welcome to Luna Diplomatic Center. I trust your journey was comfortable." "As comfortable as travel can be these days," the Zinthari said with a hint of weariness. "Without human maintenance, the jump gates have become unpredictable." Catherine gestured toward the conference room. "Please join us. There is much to discuss." As they entered the large chamber, the aliens noticed Richard Bradley among the human negotiators. Several delegates exchanged worried glances. "You recognize Ambassador Bradley?" John asked Trelkan. "Indeed. His paper on council reform from 5 years ago was quite passionate." Richard smiled thinly. "You mean the one where I predicted the council's eventual collapse under its own bureaucratic weight? The one that was dismissed as human impatience with established governance?" "The very same," Trelkan admitted. "It seems some of your predictions have proven accurate." They took their seats around the oval table. Through the windows, Earth hung blue and serene in the black sky. "Before we begin," Catherine said, "I want to be clear about our position. Earth did not withdraw on a whim. We withdrew because the council system had become corrupted and ineffective. Any discussion of our return must address these fundamental issues." A Krivak delegate leaned forward. "Madam President, with respect, the galaxy cannot continue as it is. Trade networks are collapsing. 3 regional conflicts have erupted. The council itself barely functions." "We are aware," Catherine replied calmly. "Our intelligence services have been monitoring the situation." "Then you know how urgent this is," insisted a Draconite representative. "Your limited peacekeeping operations have helped, but they are not enough." John exchanged a glance with the president. The aliens were even more desperate than they had anticipated. "We have prepared a list of conditions for Earth's potential return to galactic affairs," Richard said, activating the display system. A series of points appeared in the air above the table. The aliens studied the list silently. Finally, Trelkan spoke. "Restructuring of council voting procedures, investigation into corruption, guaranteed autonomy in the Orion sector." He paused at the last item. "The immediate resignation of High Chancellor Vexlar." "These are our non-negotiable terms," Catherine stated. The Brill representative chittered nervously. "The Chancellor is the longest-serving leader in council history. Demanding his resignation is the logical consequence of his actions," Richard interrupted. "Our evidence shows he orchestrated the campaign against Earth. The galaxy is now suffering the results." The room fell silent. Then a Melnarian spoke up. "Even if we agreed to these terms, many in the council would resist. The old powers still have influence." Catherine smiled. "Which is why we've prepared a demonstration." She nodded to Admiral Rogers, who activated her communication device. "Proceed with the test." On the large view screen, they watched as a small Earth vessel appeared in deep space. 3 unmanned target drones moved into position around it. "What you are about to witness is a controlled test of the Prometheus Protocol," Admiral Rogers explained. The drones opened fire simultaneously. Energy beams and projectiles streaked toward the Earthship. When they hit, they simply rippled across an invisible barrier and dissipated. After a full minute of sustained fire, the ship remained completely untouched. "As you can see," Catherine said to the stunned delegates, "Earth is now capable of defending itself against any threat. This technology has already been deployed to our major colonies and fleet vessels. This is Remarkable, Trelkan whispered. It changes the equation, John added. Earth no longer needs council protection. We can remain isolated indefinitely, if necessary. Richard leaned forward. But that's not what we want. Humanity believes in cooperation and mutual progress. We simply insist that cooperation be fair and transparent. The alien delegates conferred quietly among themselves. Finally, Trelkan turned back to the humans. I believe we can agree to your core terms, he said. The required reforms will be difficult but necessary. As for Chancellor Vexlar, he paused. Recent events have already weakened his position significantly. This may simply accelerate the inevitable. Then we have a foundation for discussion, Catherine said. Our teams can work out the details over the coming days. As the formal negotiations began, John stepped outside for a moment. Through the window, he could see Earth shining against the blackness of space. 9 months ago, he had walked out of the council chamber, leaving chaos in his wake. Now, he prepared to walk back in, but this time on humanity's terms. 3 weeks later, President Catherine Wells stood before a joint broadcast to Earth and the galaxy beyond. Billions of humans and aliens watched as she prepared to announce the results of the negotiations. Citizens of Earth and all sentient beings, today marks a new chapter in our shared history, she began. After careful deliberation, Earth has agreed to return to interstellar diplomacy under the terms negotiated at Luna. She continued, outlining the reforms that would transform the Galactic Council, weighted voting that prevented small-scale bribery, oversight mechanisms to prevent corruption, and guaranteed autonomy for all species in their home sectors. We withdrew not to abandon our place in the stars, but to remind the galaxy that humanity will not be taken for granted, she declared. The path forward requires mutual respect and true partnership. 1 month later, Olivia Martinez, Earth's newly appointed ambassador, walked into the reformed council chamber. The room fell silent as she approached the human seat, empty for nearly a year. Unlike John Miller's departing gesture, Olivia deliberately placed her translation device at her position and switched it on. The symbolic message was clear. Humanity was ready to speak and listen again. As she surveyed the chamber, she noted many new faces. The Zalarian seat, once occupied by Chancellor Vexlar, now held a younger representative. The power balance had shifted visibly. Ambassador Martinez, said Moderator Trelkan, Earth's voice has been missed in these halls. We welcome your return. Olivia nodded. Thank you, Moderator. Earth is pleased to rejoin Galactic Affairs as an equal partner, not a junior member. She looked around the chamber once more, meeting the eyes of various delegates. We have much work to do together. Let us begin. Throughout the galaxy, human peacekeepers returned to their posts. Trade routes reopened. Communication networks stabilized. The Great Withdrawal had ended, but something fundamental had changed. The galaxy now understood a truth it had previously overlooked. Humans were not just another species finding their place among the stars. They were a force that could reshape the order of things simply by their absence. Never again would Earth be taken for granted.